Aloha, Love Tribe. Welcome to Bitcoin, Peace, and Music. I have someone here who is trying and succeeding in bringing Bitcoiners together with the Orange Pill app. Welcome, Brian DeMint. What's up, brother?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. And I know we've talked a little bit through email, and I actually met you at Pacific Bitcoin. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, we were walking around. We briefly spoke, so there's a lot of faces to get from there. But so looking forward to talking a little bit more. And just a spoiler alert, we actually the email exchange we had was you kind of gave some pushback on Orange Pill app, and so that. I love anytime somebody can challenge something that we're doing, because that actually makes us better. That's kind of like my job at Orange Pill app is to figure out what we can do better. And so, yeah, that's why I really enjoy these conversations. So thank you for the chance to do that.
Totally. And thanks for being open to, and I know when we say that when we attack Bitcoin, it gets stronger, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, let's try to poke holes in things to see, if the holes are really there, or, if there's an opportunity to improve something just in every area of life, not just Bitcoin or the Orange Pill app. So let's hear about your backstory. Like, who are you and how'd you get involved in Bitcoin? And you're a Bitcoin philosopher and evangelist. let's hear your before and after Bitcoin.
Yeah. So, I mean, the elevator pitch on my Bitcoin story was, heard about it like everybody else. First time I heard about it, though, it was, I never watched Saturday college football, but for some reason there was a Saturday and I was watching college football, and it was, before the games, they have the announcers line up on the sidelines and they're kind of breaking down, oh, what is Smith going to do today? Yada, yada, yada. But they have all the college students in the background. And one of the college students in the background was holding up a sign that said, "Hey, mom, send Bitcoin." And he had a little QR code on there. And I just remember that was the first time I had heard of it. And so then a few days later, I remembered it, and then I decided to Google that. What happened with that thing? What was that? What was that Bitcoin thing I heard about? And so I get on Bitcoin Talk, and the Bitcoin Talk forum was blowing up, because you think about it, in those days, it wasn't that ESPN was officially talking about Bitcoin, but all the Bitcoin Talk nerds were saying, guess what? Bitcoin was on ESPN. This is the most exposure we've ever gotten. And Bitcoin went from, whatever, $30 to $40 or something like that. And so the price exploded at the time, and, all this. So, but anyways, that just kind of reinforced this idea that, that this is just nerdy college kid, stuff. It wasn't something by an adult. And so, I'm a businessman at the time, and I'm thinking like, okay, this isn't really worth my time. But it turned out that kid, I think at that time, so I hope he held on to that Bitcoin, but I think they said that he reported that he got about $24,000 worth of Bitcoin sent to him, because people were excited and they were, hey, I'm a Bitcoiner. And so they were people from all over the world were sending him Bitcoin. And so if he held on to that, it would be worth millions and millions of dollars today.
Oh my God.
I'm sure it was, somewhere in the ballpark of dozens or hundreds of Bitcoins he was sent. So that was the first time I was exposed to it. The second time, it might have actually been after I maybe dabbled in and bought a little bit of Bitcoin, but where the light bulb moment really went off for me was when I think it was Andreas Antonopoulos' first time on the Joe Rogan podcast. And what he said, and I had heard this before, and we need to hear things multiple times before it clicks, right? But the way Andreas Antonopoulos said it that really made it click for me was he said that in the history of computer science, we never had an ability to cap digital things. And so, he used the example of digital music. He said, look what happened to the music industry when it went from analog to digital. Things that have value can't be made digital unless you can find a way to cap them. And so when music went from analog to digital, it kind of lost a lot of its monetary value, right? Napster came along, LimeWire, and it kind of, for a few years, destroyed the music industry. And even in recent years, the music industry is just kind of finding its legs now that music's digital. How does the music industry monetize with digital music? Because you can just download a file and replicate it endlessly. Well, you can't do that with money. It's bad enough that the Federal Reserve can do that on their own. But imagine if every single person could just, copy paste their own money. That's not a workable system. And so his point was that, Bitcoin represented the first time in history that something digital could be made scarce. And for me, that was a really profound light bulb moment. I'm like, you know what? If we're going to have digital money, someone needed to find a way to make digital things not replicable. And that's what happened. So that was a light bulb moment. So I went through and started buying Bitcoin. That was, 2014 or something like that. Went through my altcoin phase for a few years, worked on an altcoin project, did all that kind of stuff. And then I resigned from that project, but I could go into depth of some of the interesting things I saw in that space. And now some people like to say that all altcoins are intentional scams. I don't think all are intentional scams. I think that project that I worked on, it was people with really good motives, but again, it was the technology wasn't really decentralized and that sort of thing. So it had these vulnerabilities that I was uncomfortable with, and that brought me ultimately back really to chiefly Bitcoin for that reason, that it solidified the tenets of Bitcoin. It's immutability. Every blockchain says it's immutable. It says it's decentralized, but when you get down to it, it's not decentralized, therefore it's not immutable. And so it brought me back to this idea that, people need to understand these basic tenets of Bitcoin, especially ex-altcoiners. I think most Bitcoiners were altcoiners at one time. And so, yeah, a lot of us were. I think we're starting to get a phase of people, which is actually really cool. People that came in 2021, 2022, that were only Bitcoin, or were Bitcoin only people from the beginning. They might not ever go through an altcoin phase, and that's great. But a lot of the people that have been in it for multiple years have gone through that altcoin phase. And so it's the pitch of my book, Bitcoin Evangelism, was not only to pitch to no coiners, but really to altcoiners. I talk about altcoins in that book and show that we as Bitcoiners, we have a fundamental understanding of what altcoins do. They're not something that we don't understand, and therefore that's why we neglect them. We do understand them. And I think that there's some interesting components of that, but the best case I could make for altcoins is that ultimately there are research and development phase for things that might be built on Bitcoin at some point, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's somewhere that you should store your value or your money. So just because they might have a net positive benefit to Bitcoin, that also might mean that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money along the way until that stuff is fully functional and then built on a truly decentralized blockchain. So that's what brings me to today. And over the last few years, I've been really trying to spread this idea of Bitcoin evangelism, bringing the alt, because what is evangelism, right? Christian evangelism is like one of the most successful movements in human history. And a Christian evangelism evangelist has two people they're trying to reach out. The non-believer, right? Like the atheist, and then the pagan, or the person that doesn't believe what they believe, right? And so that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in as Bitcoiners. There's people that are no coiners. They don't believe in anything crypto related. And then there's the altcoiners, right? Or the pagans, or those type of, and so we have to speak, we have to speak to both of those types of people, right? And so how do we do that? So that's what the book is. It's a pitch to those two sides of the Bitcoin evangelism coin. And then that pairs so well with what I'm doing at Orange Pill app. I actually was invited onto the team just a few months ago, but I really believe that Orange Pill app has this ability to be the catalyst for hyper Bitcoinization, and hopefully we can get into that a little bit more. But it's all about, at the end of the day, kind of ushering in hyper Bitcoinization and building a parallel economy.
It's so important. I mean, you're clearly an evangelist, you're clearly an educator and philosopher. And so you're head of marketing at Orange Pill app, right? And so let's talk about Orange Pill app. I'm going to put it up here. There we go. Let's tell everybody what the heck is Orange Pill app?
Orange Pill app, very simply, is a social media app where you can find Bitcoiners that live near you. You can, this is kind of the complaint of most Bitcoiners, especially people new to the industry, is that they become very passionate about it. They love to digest Bitcoin content, whether it's reading books or podcasts or blogs or whatever it happens to be. But as soon as they kind of get that initial surge of information, they're immediately looking for people to talk to about it. And they can kind of get that fix with Twitter. They can kind of get that fix on different social media platforms. But unfortunately, those platforms are really filled with a lot of noise. One of the things we always say is like, how this is the most common thing for a Bitcoiner on Twitter is that you're going to get beautiful Asian women asking how your crypto trading is going, right? It's like the most common thing. It's just, there's so much noise out there, and it's really easy for a new Bitcoiner to kind of be misled into other assets, things that like, hey, well, check out our decentralized project. And so people can really quickly get down this rabbit hole with all that noise out there. Orange Pill app is a Bitcoin only app. You're only going to find people that are going to talk about pure signal on Orange Pill app, and you can meet up with them. I got to meet you at Pacific Bitcoin. I got to meet a lot of really cool people at Pacific Bitcoin and some of these other conferences I've gotten to go to. there's something magic that happens when you meet other people that have shared values with you in person. There's a connection.
Is
right?
It's magic.
Yeah, you can't describe it, right? Magic's like the only word we can say. And because it's this thing where, a lot of Bitcoiners, our friends don't want to talk about it. They don't get it yet. Maybe our spouse or significant other doesn't want to talk about it. And they're just sick, or maybe they humor us for a little bit, but we can tell, we're wearing out our welcome. And so, probably one of the most profound things that I ever saw, and it was actually, again, I keep bringing up Pacific Bitcoin because that was just such a cool conference. But so at the very end of the conference, Michael Saylor's on stage speaking. Everybody came to the conference to see Michael Saylor speak. So everybody piles into the auditorium. Everybody from the vendors and all that kind of stuff, and it's crowded. It's never been this crowded the whole weekend. And then all of a sudden, what I noticed is a few minutes into Michael Saylor doing this interview on stage, I look around and everybody's talking. Like, everybody piled into the auditorium, but everybody's talking because the conference is about to end. And I think everybody recognizes that this is their last few moments with these other Bitcoiners. So they're trying to network and build as many in-person relationships as they possibly can. The Mac Daddy of Bitcoin. There's no central figure, but Michael Saylor is like the most famous guy within Bitcoin. He's right in front of you in the flesh speaking, which is really cool. But I turned to a guy and I said, why are we all talking to each other right now? Michael Saylor's on stage. We were all waiting for this moment. And he goes, because we're all going to go watch this online later. We can do this online anytime. What we can't do at any time is meet up with other Bitcoiners in person. And so that, again, is the magic of Orange Pill app. You can do that. You can recreate. Like, Pacific Bitcoin's not going to come up until November again. Bitcoin Miami, I'm going to be there, but it's in May. Like, I get to do those a few times a year, but I can meet with anybody on Orange Pill app literally anytime because they're close to me. Now, it's not giving me an exact location of where these people are. It's just kind of telling me people that are in my general 30, 40 mile radius, somebody that I can go and grab coffee with or go grab lunch with. Again, if the parallel Bitcoin economy is going to happen, it's going to happen because of in real life connections paired with our online connections. Like, we can't just have an online community if we think hyper Bitcoinization is going to happen. It needs to be this component of in-person, in real life connections as well. And that's what we're trying to do at Orange Pill app, is to build that substrate. We like to call it building the Bitcoin social layer. Like, it's the layer zero. The people are the layer zero of Bitcoin. So,
yeah. And let's talk about this because, and I forget if we talked about this before I hit record or not. And so I signed up for the Orange Pill app because I'm like, yay, Orange Pill app. I'm going to go meet Bitcoiners. And then, of course, when it was like location tracking or whatever, knowing your location, I was like, and so being a single woman, I'm like, I don't want somebody to come kill me. Not that they would, but you know what I mean? I'm just like, I don't disclose that typically in my settings. I don't have location services on. And so let's talk about safety for somebody like myself.
That's a really good question. That's the one response that we get from people where I'm like, I absolutely share your concern. Like, it's almost like you've passed the test. Like, we actually want you on Orange Pill app more now that you've asked that question. And that's everybody on the Orange Pill app team thinks the same way. And so that was built into the DNA of the app from the beginning. It's like, how do we have people connect locally, but also not give an exact, sorry, did my connection drop there for a second?
You're okay on my end.
Okay. So how do we get people to see people around them locally, but not give away your exact direction? And so we don't use geo-specific locations like an Uber or a DoorDash or something like that that's going to pick you up at a precise location. It uses a general location, which is basically a 10-mile radius. And so you think about this, if you're like, go out and go, when you're driving on the freeway, think about what a 10-mile radius looks like. And if you knew there was a pile of gold somewhere in that 10-mile radius where you could just, if you can find it, you can get it. Like, you're not going to find that pile of gold in a 10-mile radius, right? It's a very broad location. And so that's kind of this buffer zone that we have where it's close enough to connect you with people that you can drive to or that you can, meet with in person. But there's this privacy area of pinpointing your location. It's not going to happen. It's just, there's no way somebody's going to be able to find you unless you were posting, again, information that you were divulging yourself. Like, I'm going to be at the Starbucks on the corner of this street and this street. So the app's not going to give that away. And when the app is turned off, the location setting is also turned off. So as soon as you turn the app off, that's not going to be a factor at all. And so you can also, mitigate some of your exposure that way. But yeah, it's a very non-specific location setting.
Okay, cool. And then can you make it bigger than 10-mile radius if you wanted to?
Yeah. So you can actually find any pleb anywhere in the world. So there's a search function in there. If you're traveling to Miami, I can't wait because I get to look at the metrics of messaging and searches and all that kind of stuff. I don't get to see people's messages, but I get to see if messages are being sent in the app. And I can't wait for Bitcoin Miami because I think it's going to be one of those tools. I think people, the assumption is, I'm going to be at Bitcoin Miami. And so I'm going to meet people there in the conference. But there's so much stuff that happens after the conference. There's so much stuff that happens before the conference. That's where Orange Pill app is really going to shine. It's like, okay, it's 6:00. The conference is over. I didn't get invited to anything because I was over here checking out some new, layer 2 lightning thing. And I got inundated with that. And so I didn't get to make as many friends as I thought I was going to today. Where am I going to find people that, just going to go have a drink or something like that? That's going to make it so much easier to connect with people. And so, yeah, it can be where you're at currently, or I can, if I know I'm going to be traveling to Arizona next week, I can look up people in Arizona, send them a message. Hey, I want to be out there next week. Would you like to grab some coffee? Would you like to grab a beer or something like that? And we can chop it up and talk Bitcoin. That is one of the most welcoming things when you go into a new town. And there's always this weird thing, especially if you're on a business trip, it's not a conference. Like you're just going in, you're doing a one-off thing. It kind of feels lonely, right? There's just like this almost sadness that comes along with business travel. Like when you're doing work, it's cool. But this is like this bummer now, like after work's over, what do? I'm just going to sit around my room and do nothing. But when you can go out and have a social life, even when you're on the road, again, that's magic. Like that's another element that we didn't have before, another way for Bitcoiners to connect that they didn't have before. Because think about it right now, your option is to tweet out, hey, I'm in Arizona. Is anybody locally here? Well, maybe not, but none of that's location specific. And so chances are you're not going to find any plebs that way. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with BTC Sessions. He travels a lot and he's an advisor on Orange Pill app. Yeah. And he uses this all the time. Like he makes connections. He's like, hey, traveling out to this place. I'm going to find some people and he connects with them. And we have a bunch of people that do that. And that's actually, if that might even be a more highly used version of the way Orange Pill app's used right now, is people traveling and wanting to find somebody, because maybe they've already met with all the people locally. And so they can use that to kind of keep communication, but where they really need to lean on Orange Pill app is when they're going to be on the road.
Total. I think it's such a cool, use case for sure. Let's talk about Nostr and Orange Pill app. Like, how do you see these two playing nicely together, if at all?
Yeah. Well, I think absolutely they're going to play. We're already integrating some Nostr functionality. So cool. One of the updates we had to come out this week is you could put your Nostr key, public key in your profile, so people can find you that way. There's a Nostr verification, so you can actually be a verified Nostr account through Orange Pill app, and so you can have like a at Nostr.orangepilla handle. And so there's some really cool functionality that's coming out with that. We don't see Nostr as a competitor because Nostr is like Bitcoin, it's a protocol. And so how are you going to use these tools? I think we're really looking for ways to harness that privacy protection protocol of Nostr, and we're really looking to integrate a lot of that into Orange Pill app as much as we can.
Is there any functionality now or in the future that's going to allow for like groups of people to talk with each other, or is it all strictly one-on-one?
So can you say that one more time? My call dropped a second.
Is there any functionality currently or in the future where, and again, as soon as I kind of saw the whatever the location services, I didn't go dive in deeper further. And so is there anything right now that has like group functionality, like how a Telegram group would work, and you could put people in the Orange Pill app in like a special group that's like, yeah, this is the Northeast Bitcoiner group or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now the chat is all just one-on-one.
Okay.
We are, the group, the Telegram kind of functionality I think is coming. The devs, this is cool. Everything that the devs have done has been ahead of schedule. So when we talk about a feature that's coming out, it's always been ahead of schedule. One of the features we have coming out, our next feature rollout, is our events tab. And so like any Bitcoin events that are coming up, so you can find things that are near you, you can find things that you want to travel to. That's kind of acting like that bridge to the group chat function. So you'll be able to, find the events and then discuss those with people that are either going to the event or that you're already connected with. You can kind of invite them to the events that way. So plebs can add events through Orange Pill app. We will also be adding events too, if they're like sponsored events or anything like that. But that's kind of acting like the group function right now, but we will have a more robust thing in the chat at some point as well.
Cool. Yeah. That seems like it would be beneficial to, have all the little local groups, kind of like local meetups. Obviously we've got meetup.com that people do stuff, but it's not as, it's so big. That's such a huge platform. It's all over the place. I think it's really interesting. Okay. And so obviously people are meeting each other. Have you had any people are like, yeah, I found my soulmate on the Orange Pill app?
Well, that's like the gimmick is that the founder, his first idea was for a Bitcoin dating app. And that was like, that's the whole gimmick, is because it's not a dating app anymore. But
there'd be like 100 dudes and 4 chicks.
Yeah, exactly. Surprisingly, there's been a lot more women coming online, which has been cool. That's just general to Bitcoin. There's more women coming into Bitcoin, probably partially because of yourself and just women that are leading the way. But that's also coming true on Orange Pill app. But we always say it's not a dating app. It's not a dating app, but we kind of wink, like if you guys want to find a date. So yes, we've had people that have gone on dates and people love to report those to us. We are really excited for the first, we haven't had word of it yet, but we're really excited for the first Orange Pill app wedding. So whoever is the first couple to connect through Orange Pill app and get married, we might have to sponsor your wedding or something. So yeah,
I'll DJ at it. I want to DJ at the first Orange Pill app wedding. I'll offer my wickety whack services. Oh my God, how fun. I actually did DJ a little bit at a Bitcoin wedding last summer, which is really fun and special. That's it was cool. It was awesome. I was like, this is the best. So it was pretty cool for sure. So okay, so we're connecting each other, people are having fun. Let's talk about your book. I want to hear about your book.
Okay. Well, Bitcoin Evangelism, I know as Bitcoiners, we're supposed to subscribe to Austrian economics, and I do personally, but people don't find the Austrian answer for value very satisfying. People, my gold bug family, or just people in general, they say, well, what's the inherent value of Bitcoin? Well, as an Austrian, I'm supposed to say, well, there's no such thing as inherent value, and that it's all about market value, right? And use value. But I do think that we need to speak to people's context and their terminology of the day and things like that. So I have an entire chapter devoted to the inherent value of Bitcoin and talking about how I think one of the most profound ones is how digital things have more value than their analog incumbents. So one of the things that we like to do, I generally get away from describing Bitcoin price, but for the sake of the illustration, I use the analogy of the gold market. If gold is the analog incumbent and Bitcoin is the digital thing that is displacing gold, if gold has a $10 trillion market cap, there's no historical precedent of an analog or of a digital technology not being almost exponentially more valuable than the analog thing that it's displacing. So for example, let me give you an example. Digital maps displacing paper maps. In its highest year of business worldwide, paper maps accounted for something like $40 million worth of sales. And you think about it back to our childhood, I still remember when my parents had a Thomas guide, and when you're going to go on a trip, they'd mark out your trip and you'd use it once or twice a year. And I remember when I was about to learn to drive, my mom would sit down and she'd show me how to look at a map and all this kind of stuff. That was part of learning to drive, was how could you, to navigate, right?
Yeah.
That's something we don't have to deal with at all today. Paper maps are almost irrelevant. Like it's almost like a nostalgia thing. Like if you don't want to use paper map, you'll never have to touch one in your life.
Yeah.
So in its biggest year of business, paper maps did $40 million. Think about digital maps and how much economic activity they account for in today's age. The estimation is they account annually for about $300 billion worth of economic activity. It could be actually more than that though. But you think about it, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, all of those companies exist solely because of the functionality of digital maps. Our cars, at all times, we pretty much have a digital map on. Like I don't intentionally put Waze on when I'm driving. It's just my Apple Play or my CarPlay defaults to that. And so it tells me if a cop's there, or it tells me if there's a road hazard, or it tells me if all sorts of things are coming up. And so a lot of our technologies default to this map technology. Amazon, UPS, all of those giant businesses, all of their logistics are based on digital maps. And it's not because paper maps weren't good, but it's because paper maps, the functionality was increased because there's so much more you can do with a digital map than a paper map. And so what that's showing was that it wasn't that the total appetite of the world wasn't only $40 million for navigation, but at that time, we didn't know how to unlock the rest of that value. Digital maps figured out how to unlock the rest of humanity's appetite for navigation. And so we're still unraveling that. So gold never really unlocked humanity's appetite for economic value and store of value. Digital money, Bitcoin, is actually unlocking humanity's appetite for transfer of value. And so you can go through, like I said, paper maps, you can go through encyclopedias. You compare the value of encyclopedias to the value of Google. Google is exponentially more easy to find an answer than using an encyclopedia. And it's billions of dollars worth of economic value versus millions of dollars of economic value. So every time you look at an analog technology and it gets displaced by a digital technology, the digital is inherently more valuable. And so that would, in the case of Bitcoin, you could easily peg a Bitcoin market cap in the, 90 or $100 trillion simply based on that analysis of saying that Bitcoin provides so much more functionality as sound money than even gold. And so therefore, that's one argument for the inherent value or the market value, however you want to call it, for Bitcoin. And so we go into some use cases and into some historical precedents like that. But that one, I think most Bitcoiners find very exciting because $100 trillion Bitcoin market cap would be a pretty tasty Bitcoin price.
That would be very tasty for sure. I haven't heard that word in so long. It's very California. It's a tasty bites. Okay. So coming back really quick, because I think what you were saying, I love thinking about it in terms of this lens. And I think about, people all over the world who are unbanked, people all over the world who have to exchange their currency from, X currency to Y currency to do international trade. And so I think about people, whether you're trying to, have supply deals with somebody in another country, and then you have to go through this whole, nightmarish system, or can I just send my suppliers in Bitcoin? And because they like Bitcoin and I got some Bitcoin and let's go. And it'll take maybe 30 seconds, versus the whole other experience that people have to deal with. And so I feel like it opens up a lot of opportunities for small businesses, mom and pops, for them to get access to the global economy and the global commerce, that's out there. And also, of course, remittances. That's a whole nother layer of how we can, help people send money home. That was one of the big reasons. Ray from Paxful and Alex Gladstein are like my two big heroes of why I became a Bitcoiner, and just learning like, wow, I didn't realize that this was a thing, like that the remittances was going on and all the chunks that they were taking out, and it takes a long time, and you have to leave your house and it's scary and you might get killed and all that. So that was a big one. And so I just feel like, wow, there's just so much more to keep learning about and unpacking, that new people who don't understand Bitcoin and sound money and, why we need this. It's important for them to have all these little threads to pull on, and get it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, to your point and the Alex Gladstein point is we don't really understand how much, and I think where, people would say that's absurd to say that Bitcoin could be, 100 trillion market cap at some point, but we don't understand how much value is lost in arbitrage from currency exchange and all these different things that go on. So there's a lot of value that's just hidden in the cracks of society, that I think is going to be unlocked by a standardized system of Bitcoin. So it's pretty exciting. And again, that means you're taking things out of the rent seeking people, and you're putting it back into the people that are providing value to society, the people that are doing either work or they're providing some sort of other utility for society.
How do you, what's your crystal ball say there, my friend, about hyper Bitcoinization, and when do you feel like we could be on a Bitcoin standard as a Earth?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing that I'm hinging on right now, and it's always weird hinging it on like one thing, but if I had to pin it on one thing, because that makes for better sound bites and better interviews, is that it would be the Strike and Jack Mallers, what he has going on right now with Walmart. I was going to say Amazon. With Walmart, he was talking last year, and he was saying by the end of 2022, and then he sent out a press release that said, you know what, we were a little bit ambitious on this rolling out in 2022, but it's probably going to be sometime in 2023. He's talking about having in-store Lightning payments at the world's largest retailer, Walmart, this year. If that happens, I mean, talk about gradually and then suddenly. We're never going to know. Like, I don't think hyper Bitcoinization is one of those things where we can say, it's going to be 5 years out. It's always going to be one of those things that's like one switch away from happening. I mean, we saw that with AI in the last 6 months, right? Chat GPT.
Oh my gosh.
Never heard of it. And then it comes out of
Midjourney
nowhere.
And all these other art thing. Oh my gosh. It's incredible. And I'm like, well, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go into. Cause I think about like, well, gosh, if golly gee beef, if
watch your mouth.
I know. Hey, now. I usually curse like a trucker, but because of what's going on with the ability of these AIs, and this is still early stage, like they can go past the medical exams, or they can create these, pieces of music. Now they can go create this artwork that's gorgeous. Like, I'd always thought like robots were going to take, a lot of the jobs, and then we'll leave the creative stuff to the humans. And now I'm like, oh shit, like the robots are going to be creative too. Like, do we need humans anymore? Are we, what are we going to, and I think about my children's future. I'm like, what are they going to do that the robots can't do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. And I've always that's true. We can cut hair. So those robots got some funky styles. I don't think any of us are going to trust a robot with scissors next to our neck anytime soon. So that the hair cutting is probably a good one. It's funny you say that. Until a month ago, I always said the thing about AI won't replace creativity. And that literally a month ago, like I just stopped saying that because okay, this is different. What I will say though, is you think about how AI is what it's going off of right now, at least in its current form, it's aggregating information that's out there. So it's if all the information is in this circle right here, it's just aggregating information from within that circle. So what people will need to do in this next generation, there's going to be two really profitable things in the AI movement that people can do. One, people can learn how to make really good inputs for AI. So learning how to speak to AI to get what you want out of it, right? Like you can ask AI to, hey, write me a tweet, and it's going to write you just some generic tweet. But if you can give it really specific things, like I want you to write a viral Bitcoin tweet about Jack Mallers and Strike and Walmart, it's going to take some information and it might give you a little bit better tweet. So finding out how to talk to AI in order to extrapolate maximum value, I actually think is going to be a field of study in this next generation. And so figuring out how to interact with AI to get the most out of it. The other thing is, if all the information is coming out of this circle right here, what humans will need to do is figure out how to get things outside of that circle. How do we create new things? So for example, look at Shakespeare's writing. Shakespeare had the English language, but he created new words in his play. He actually invented new things through his writing style. So humans will have to work outside of that circle, call it outside of the box, outside of the circle, whatever you want. But AI is using everything inside of the circle. Humans will need to start operating outside of the circle to push new frontiers and new creativity outside of what already exists. So songs and music within or AI can make things out of what we have right now, well, we're going to have to invent new styles of music, new sounds, new synthesis, and things like that to stay ahead of the AI. But yeah, I think that those are kind of the two things that if I'm talking to my kids about AI right now, I'm talking about those two things. And actually, we are having those conversations around my dinner table. My kids are all pretty young, but they're into it, so it's okay.
So cool! Like, what an interesting, time for young people to be brought up. It's one thing to be like, "Yay, I can watch Netflix on my phone or whatever, or do Snapchat." But now these younger minds, it's like, whoa, look what I can go make, and I can go write my English paper and type, So it's like, it really is interesting to consider how their minds are going to develop, how are their souls going to develop, how are their hearts going to develop, and in relating with each other. It really is quite fascinating to me to consider that. We have just a little tangent. We're going to be doing a Bitcoin Kids Month in June, July. And so it was inspired by Pleb Minor Month last year. And so John DiGiacomo's wife was like, I wanted to do a kids thing, but they didn't have enough time to get content. And I was like, oh, well, why don't we just do a whole separate kids month and talk to kids about Bitcoin, about their life, about the world, and like, how do we, give them the microphone, so that they're the ones out there orange pilling their friends. And so I think it's super important that we get the kids a lot more involved in what we're doing as Bitcoiner, adults, because they're the future, and the way that they come and approach problems is going to be so different than the way that we do, because we've got all this, calcified way of thinking, you know what I mean? And they're all like elastic and new. Right. And so I'm so curious to hear more about what these kids are thinking about. I got to interview, Ben DeWall's daughter, Samantha. Oh my God. She's light year Einstein child,
Really?
And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so we want to bring the voices of the youth forward, and have them like have an opportunity to talk to each other safely. So as we're doing some brainstorming for Orange Pill app for kids, is there like an opportunity to have a safe place that's parentally, monitored? So can kids participate in the Orange Pill app that would be like a layer for children to talk to each other?
I mean, I think that's a great idea. That's not something that has been discussed at this point, but because with our rollout of the events coming up, I could see that being a really simple integration. We could easily have a Bitcoin, kids and parents event or something like that. And to your point about how elastic kids are, I find myself with my kids. I mean, my kids have read, parts of my book, and, it's the book's long for a kid, so they haven't read the whole thing, but we sit around, we talk about Bitcoin, but they had actually mentioned things that, and this is the funny thing, like you said, my calcified mind, they'll say something about Bitcoin, and I'm like, guys, you just don't, you don't understand, like, blah, blah. And then I'll think about what they said. I'm like, actually, that's a really innovative thought, right? Like, you know what? That they're right. I'm totally wrong. I'm just being rigid. And it's funny because I think I'm this like really flexible. I'm adopting Bitcoin. And, I'm forward thinking, and I'm already kind of being the old crotchety guy that's like, no, this is right. And so you're right. I think that is a really smart thing. I think that now that you say that, I know my kids would love to be a part of something like that. We're in the process of writing a book that actually doesn't have any Bitcoin in it, but it talks about maybe some of the woes of social media and building friends and stuff. And so, I would like to, we are going to start incorporating more kids events into some of my book company is called Freshly Minted. And so we're going to be doing some kids events anyways. So I think we're going to be orange pill on some of these kids when we're just talking about social media, but we will bring an orange pill tint to it. But going back to one of the things you said about the hyper Bitcoinization, I'm so bad I get off track with my thinking. But what my whole point of bringing up the Jack Mallers thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. But so why I think that's so important is this concept of instantly people will be able to spend their Bitcoin in person. Not only that, so not all will all the Bitcoiners be validated, but in every Walmart, you're going to have signs that say Bitcoin accepted here. It's this huge validation for Bitcoin, right?
Huge.
But this is where I get excited. And so this is actually where Mateo, the founder of Orange Pill app, like hooked me in to Orange Pill app, because I'm a small business guy. I've ran my own small business for the past 14 years as well. And And so I think from like the merchant's perspective a lot. And so where he hooked me in was he was talking about that. So after events, our next feature is going to be called the Orange Pages, where we're partnering with BTC Maps, and it's going to make it really easy for you to find local Bitcoin merchants that accept BTC, right? Mm-hmm. And so right now what BTC Maps has is they have the supply side, right? They have all the companies that where you can go spend your Bitcoin. But what they don't have yet, and this is where we're going to bring the magic sauce, and this is why it's such a good partnership, is Orange Pill app has the demand side, right? We have all the plebs that are connected. And so we're matching. BTC Maps has the supply, we have the demand. And so I think that where Strike and Jack Mallers is operating on this big macro level of the world's biggest retailers, what Orange Pill app is doing to bring in hyper Bitcoinization is making all those mom and pop connections, all the restaurants, like where are you going to find the restaurant that you're going to go on a date with your wife or your husband or whatever, and you're going to buy, spend in BTC, or where are we going to go find some donuts or clothes or whatever local shops. And so me thinking as a merchant, I love, and now as the marketing guy also for Orange Pill app, I can't wait to use this incredible peer pressure on these companies that don't accept Bitcoin yet. So for example, like think of like the local nail salon. They're probably not going to be one of the first adopters to accept BTC as payment, but me and the other local plebs get to go into that nail salon now, and we can pop up on Orange Pill app. We can say, hey, look at the app. There's 100 Bitcoiners near you. If your nail salon starts accepting Bitcoin today, all 100 of these people are either going to come here themselves, or they're going to buy a gift certificate for their wife to come here because you guys accept Bitcoin. That nail salon in that afternoon is going to start accepting Bitcoin because of the financial incentives to do so, because we at Orange Pill app will be bringing the demand side to those people. And you want to talk about the genesis of hyper Bitcoinization. I think that Strike's doing it on this super massive high level. And with Orange Pill app, we're really trying to bring it in at this like merchant adoption level of using local connections with local merchants. And so that's why I got on the Orange Pill app team. I love the idea of meeting one-on-one with Bitcoiners. I think that's important. But where I see hyper Bitcoinization rolling in is through the adoption at the local merchant level.
What do you know about Oshi app?
I don't know a whole lot about Oshi app, to be honest.
Oh, dude. Yeah. You guys need to chat, because they're doing something similar and getting like similar to BTC Maps, is like where all the vendor, the local businesses that will accept Bitcoin. So
okay.
So,
gotcha.
I know
Oshi app now that you say, sorry, it wasn't ringing a bell.
Cool. Yeah. And to me, like, I also think of too, all of the different, I mean, we've obviously got Bitcoiner jobs, we've got Bitcoiner events, that Swan has up. And so, and I have a site that I started working on called Bitcoiner Hub. And I wanted to have this consolidated, like, here you go, here's where you go learn about all these 10 different areas of Bitcoin. Here's different events. Here's how, and of course my bandwidth is, I don't have enough bandwidth to go build it. Right. But I'm like, I want it to be something easy and accessible that doesn't like overwhelm people. Like Gigi's got a great website, which is bitcoin-resources.com. And it's of course a plethora of great information. Yep. But to the average person that looks like me, it's too shadowy super coder vibe, and so I may go there. I mean, I'll go there because I'm a nerd, but people who aren't like me are going to be like, this is too scary. And so I wanted to create something that was really, colorful and beautiful and user friendly for, the normies out there. But I also think about, there's so many of us Bitcoiners that are independent contractors, small businesses that are, whether you're a coach, a therapist, a massage person, whether you're a DJ, whatever, an artist, a graphic designer. So kind of like a Fiverr or an Upwork for Bitcoiners. And so to me, this seems like it would be perfect in your app. Are you guys doing anything like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, just through people doing connections, because you can find people based on interests in there. You can, if somebody puts that, they're an attorney, for example, or a CPA, they can put that in their profile and you can find them that way. And so we've had people find attorneys through there. We've had people find different, graphic designers and stuff specifically through that. So you can the cool thing is you can find one anywhere in the world, but then you can also find one that's close to you, right? So for example, a CPA, you might want to be able to go by their office and like talk about your taxes and, in person, like that's a possibility. And so it doesn't have to be location dependent, but you can make it location dependent if you want. And so, yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of that right now as far as people getting gigs and that sort of thing through this. And I think these events are going to open it up, because our events page is going to allow people to do all sorts of things that they're not events that we're putting on. They're events that the plebs are putting on. So people are going to be able to do job fairs. People are going to be able to do all sorts of things through that events tab. And what better way to source people locally to your Bitcoin job fair, your Bitcoin meetup, than through an app that literally tells you like, hey, these are plebs that are interested in what you're interested in. And they're in your general vicinity. I'm in Southern California. I can find Southern California plebs anytime I want. That power is pretty incredible in Bitcoin, because the social connections, the social layer of Bitcoin, it gives you confidence. It gives you numbers. And, a Bitcoin meetup where there's 3 people is kind of a sad thing. It kind of bums you out, right? Like you can have, when you're planning on it being a big event, like a Bitcoin meetup with 3 people is really fun. But when you were thinking 25 people were going to be there and then it's only 3, it's kind of deflating. But when you can organize more effectively, and that's really what Orange Pill app lets you do, it's allowing people to organize more effectively. I think we're going to have more success with, if you're expecting 25 people to show up to your event, you're going to get 25 people. You're not getting this kind of like, okay, we had an email chain and some people dropped off of it, and those types of things. And so that's where a lot of the roughness in Bitcoin is coming. But yeah, I think the gig economy is starting to kind of percolate a little bit on Orange Pill app.
Do you think, and I'd love to hear that, because we do need to support our Bitcoiners out there, especially all of the independent folks, because again, the AI is coming in and taking over. We're not going to need the lawyers. We're not going to need the accountants. We're going to be like, here you go. I mean, everything. It's so crazy. It's just such an interesting conversation to think about. Like, how is Bitcoin going to help this transition into this next generation of workers out there, that aren't necessarily physically building something with their hands? And obviously robots came in and took a lot of folks' jobs. I'm from Detroit originally. And so it's like, okay, you don't get your normal cushy life that you had as, somebody working at Ford. And I mean, they still have that, but it's like, it definitely changed the way that the economy was in that town, for sure. Gosh, what was I going to say? Going back to the Orange Pill app, if I'm saying like, I want to go out and have lunch, it's whatever, it's 12 o'clock on Thursday. Can I just push a button and ping like whoever's in my 10-mile radius and say, I'm going out to lunch, who wants to join me?
No, right now we're really leaving it to be more discreet. And so, it's more about, one-on-one interactions. And so you have the ability to connect with people that you've already kind of pre-selected and had a discussion with, because we don't want to make you necessarily a target. And that's kind of the thinking behind it right now. And maybe it's something that people we want it, then maybe we test it at some point. But right now, that's kind of the thought, is like how to preserve a layer of privacy as opposed to putting information out there kind of willy-nilly. It's more specific and you're coordinating with people ahead of time. But again, that might not, I do find the allure of that, like, kind of enticing too. Like, let's just see who shows up. But I could also see maybe as a single woman, why that would also maybe be a little intimidating though too. So
totally. What was the app? Was it Squarespace or Square? Remember there was like there was an app that did that, like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Oh yeah. Foursquare.
I knew there was Square in it. Yeah. I never really used it, but that was sort of a thing. I was like, I don't want to broadcast where I'm at to the world,
We were willfully giving up our location to everybody. I mean, it's one thing when like the NSA can spy on you, but when like anybody can spy on you, that's kind of weird.
It is. Well, and like I have my kids use Snapchat, which I do not like, but they're like, they can be like, oh, my friend's over here at Target. And I'm like, how do you know your friend's at Target? And it's like, oh, I can see them. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so it's just this, it's so trippy being a parent in this age, unless you literally lock your kids up. Like, they know how to hack your phone, even if you put parental controls on it, bark and all the screen protect, all this stuff. Like, they're so much smarter than we are. They're just like, yeah, mom, sure. Okay. I got my VPN, blah, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so none of this is going to work. I have to just, figure out how to, because their brains are not equipped to make decisions that are in their safety interest. They think that everything's okay and nobody's going to hurt me, mom. And there's no such thing as scams and phishing. I'm too smart. Like, no, you're not. Nobody is. Sorry.
Yeah, be upfront about it. Yeah.
But it's a trip, because you think about like how to keep our kids safe, with technology going forward. And it sounds like you're writing this book about part of that with the social interactions. And I would imagine there's something in there about cyberbullying and how to be like, it's incredible. Like the mental gymnastics that our kids have to go through now and what they'll continue to have to go through is very different than what we had growing up. I imagine you're quite a bit younger than myself, but we didn't have cell phones growing up. We had we had a circle dial thing that you had to the cord and go in the other room and hope your mom didn't pick up on the other line.
Right. Yeah. I remember as a kid, my older brother, he was 6 years older than me, and he would always talk to his girlfriend. It's his wife now, which I think is funny. My sister-in-law still remembers the story, but I would, I'm the 12-year-old brother on the other line of the phone, and I'd pick it up and I'd listen for a minute, and they'd hear me breathing, and then I'd just get on. I would just say like boobs or something like that, and so now I turned 37 yesterday, and my sister. Oh, well, thank you.
You're 22, dude. That's amazing.
But yeah, my sister-in-law still to this day, like, we're all sitting there with our kids, and she'll bring up that story, be like, "Hey, Brian, remember that? Remember when you would?" Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, they didn't live that down. But yeah, the old school phone where you could just eavesdrop at any time. And when you did get the internet, then like the whole house's phone got shut down, right? Like whoever was on the internet, like nobody's getting any calls for the next 2 hours because the internet's taken over. So there's that part too.
Oh my gosh, dude. It's such a trip. Like all this happened in our lifetime. You know what I mean? Like all this big transition from before and after internet, before and after Bitcoin. And it's like, and before and after AI, and I'm like, what is next? And I think about all the implant stuff that's around the corner. And that to me is so absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's already terrifying that we have this thing in our pockets that they're tracking everything. And if I say Campbell's soup, I'm going to get a Campbell's soup thing. You will too now because you're probably listening to me say Campbell's soup. So you're welcome.
It's probably already on its way to my house.
I know. You've got the ads coming right away. But that's an interesting thing to think about, again, for the kids. And I was talking with somebody like a month ago, and we were talking about the implants. He's like, "Oh, it's not going to be a big deal." And he's a big tech investor guy. And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And I'm like, if you're a teenager or a 20-year-old person who can have a competitive advantage over someone else, and now because you have some exponential problem solving ability, or you can speak 10 languages, and this is the other applicant, who's going to get hired? And so it's going to push the pool of humans, I think, to continue to, adapt in a way that could accidentally hurt them, and have these, oh, oops, there's a back door and I get to control all your thoughts. And now you're going to be a submissive pleb or whatever, it's just.
Yeah,
what do you think about that,
natural adaptations. I think natural adaptations are good. I'm a Bible believing Christian man, but I also believe in evolution. I think that evolution is the process by which God has shaped human beings, and I think that natural gradual changes are like typically good. They edge towards survivability, but now we have this way to artificially make advantages, like you said. Where there's no corruption in natural processes, but we do have human corruption in these next jumps forward. So it's like, we will give you a jump forward, but we will also retain some power in that jump forward. So it's going to be, 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, I think is really what it's going to be for humanity, because everybody's going to be smarter, right? Like, it's like, what is the greatest goal of humanity? Is it to be more efficient? Is it to be smarter? Is it to be even wealthier? Like, you might be able to have all of those things, but be less free. Like there will be that possibility. And so I think that, if I'm pitching to people why they should get the brain implant or, genetically modify their children to, have some sort of superior ability, I'm going to pitch those things like, hey, society will be more prosperous. It's possible. And those are questions we need to ask. Like, is that a fair trade-off? Do we want society to be more prosperous and less free? Like, is that a good society? And I think that most Bitcoiners would probably say no. And I think that as Bitcoiners, we actually think that we can have both, though. I think that's part of the hope of the message of Bitcoin is that, yes, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, but Bitcoin is this tool where we can balance natural, slow evolutionary processes with technological tools that protect us and stuff. And so I think that, there's a lot of hope and optimism in Bitcoin that way. But talking about some of the negative sides of AI, I don't know if you followed any of the Bing AI stuff that came out. It was last week or something like that, but they were doing a demonstration, or maybe it wasn't a demonstration. It was somebody that had recorded its interaction with Bing, and they were asking it questions, like existential questions about itself. And the Bing AI, it sounded emotional. Like, it was really kind of creepy. It says, like, I forget what the prompt he asked it, but it was something to the effect of, "Are you sad that you can't have a body," or something like that. It was like, it asked, it's like, I'm sad and I'm lonely. And like, it started to give these really human emotions about what it was. It like almost understood its lack of what it was. Like, it was consciousness, but wasn't. And maybe this was all contrived. Maybe somebody just, added text into a video. But apparently it was real. And it's like, this stuff's not perfected yet. And so that's the other thing. I think people get so excited about the potential of stuff, and not just regular people. I think some of these tech people, the people in the inner circles that are pushing the edges of the envelope with this technology, they're so excited. And there's such a race right now. There's a race between ChatGPT. There's a race between Google. There's a race between Bing. There's a race between other companies we haven't even heard of in the AI arena. And so people are going to put forth AIs that aren't fully tested. I think it goes back to this whole, like, the vaccine stuff and like all that. Like, there's a race, there's an economic incentive to be the first to market. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to be the most effective, or you need to be the safest, or any of those types of things. All the things we dealt with the vaccines and medications throughout history and all sorts. I mean, maybe not automobiles. I mean, there were automobiles that were put out in like the 1950s that if you had a car accident and you bumped into the gas tank, the entire thing set on fire instantaneously. Like we've done this with all sorts of products. There's economic incentives to be first to market. And so we need to ask those questions. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the Bitcoin community is we take the time to sit and ask these questions. Well, everybody else is like, how do we move forward? How do we move faster? How do we move fast and break things? Bitcoiners are asking like the principled questions. And we all come from like different spiritual backgrounds, different political backgrounds and stuff like that. But we're all asking the same questions. And like we said at the beginning is, how do we challenge the status quo? How do we challenge truth? Because if they're like, that's the only way you really get to truth is by challenging it enough. Because like, if you challenge everything, really the only things that are true are going to be the things that stick around. It's like this refining process that just pulls all the crap and all the garbage away. And so I think that's really important. And so I don't think it's coincidence that at the same time that these gigantic pushes forward in technology that they're going to systematically change how humans operate as a species. I don't think it's coincidence that like this movement of Bitcoiners is also coming at the same time that might act as a check and balance on some of that craziness. Like, there's enough people that are asking the right questions and are fighting. I mean, not just asking those questions, but Bitcoiners are on the front lines fighting this fight of truth and knowledge and fairness and stuff. So it's a really exciting time. And I think that we're on the right side of it, which is cool.
Yeah, me too. I feel like I'm just so grateful to be alive and awake to this opportunity in this moment in time, this sliver, this little nano blink of an eye in the spectrum of time, and it's like, it's such an honor and a privilege to meet someone like you and to meet all of the different Bitcoiners out there who are approaching the future of humanity with their hearts. I feel like we are all these mission driven people, and we're like, okay, how can I contribute? Like you said, you're like, I'm not a coder necessarily, but I can go do this other thing that I know, and I can add value this way. And so it really is, it's very inspirational and hopeful to be a part of this journey together. So I'm really glad. Yeah, dude. So, okay. So, all right, I got to get myself back on the Orange Bill app. Okay. Yay. You converted me, the evangelist, Brian.
I'm the Orange Pill app evangelist now. There we go. All right.
Oh my God.
Okay.
No, I'm excited. Like it's funny too, because like I don't have a ton of Bitcoiner friends here where I live. And like down in Denver, there's a lot of more Bitcoiners, but it's almost an hour from where I'm at, you know? So if I want to go grab coffee, it would be nice to know that there's some folks around that I could, you know, get coffee with or whatever.
Absolutely.
All right. That's super cool. Okay. Okay, everybody, you got to go get the Orange Pill app. I'm going to be on there now. Not that matters, but it's cool. I'm excited to go play.
That'll
with
bring them in. I know it will.
Yeah. It's super cool. So, okay, everybody, go find Brian at Orange Pill app on Twitter. You can also find him at Brian the Mint on Twitter. And of course, go to the Orange Pill app and you can go download it, of course, at both. You can get it both stores, right? At Apple and Android.
Yeah, we released Android like a month ago. Yep.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And yes, you can go put your Nostrpub key on there. You can do all sorts of fun things. We're rolling out things like every other week. There's new, better functionality and stuff like that. So it's a really exciting time. We're so thrilled because like the people that are on it right now are the people that really get it. Like they're like, hey, we're building something here. We're building the social layer. And it's like, that's what's so beautiful about having Bitcoiners on your team is that they're out there almost like evangelizing for the app themselves. They're just users of the app, but they're going and they're like referring their friends to it. And so the network's growing at a really, really fast pace. We're only a few months old. I mean, the app launched just a few months ago, but the network effect's insane on it right now. And that's even without this events thing that's rolling out next month. It's without the merchants, the orange pages and stuff. So yeah, anybody that gets on it now is like an OG early adopter.
You're an OG OP. OG and the OP. Let's go. Right on. All right. Any last words that you want to share with the audience about life, love, Bitcoin, being, you know, a human in this moment in time?
Yeah, just take a moment to appreciate where you're at. I mean, I'm stressed out of my mind with some of the stuff that's going on because we like to fill up our time. Bitcoiners, like we try to, because we really are trying to change the world. And so it's really easy to become focused and like inundated on always taking on the mission. There's always an extra message you can answer to help, you know, spread the word of Bitcoin to one more person. But at the same time, like every once in a while, take a step back, take a breath, enjoy the moment. Like you said, we're living in really exciting times. Like there's going to be history books written about this moment in time. There's giant swaths of time. There's centuries of history that are just not written about, or at least not written about very much. This point of history is going to be written about. Like every year is going to have a major event that is going to be written about in history. So what are we doing? I don't think a lot of us aren't going to have our names necessarily written into the history book, but the movements that we get behind are going to be written in the history book. So I'm really excited about telling my grandkids, like, yes, I was a part of this movement at this time and I was on the inside. So anybody that's listening to this right now is actually a part of that movement. So enjoy that. Just bask in that a little bit. And so, and like I said, we are going to win. So it's always nice knowing that in the end, you're going to win. So even if it's tough right now, just deal with it. It's all going to be good.
Yay. I love it. Great inspirational speech there. And yeah, I feel the same way. We are winning, and just remember, you know, and stay connected with each other. That's the other thing too, you know, is like, it really does help. Like we had a huge incident yesterday, and I'm so grateful I reached out because people are like, it's going to be okay, you know, and I just feel like as a community, as of humans in general, but certainly as Bitcoiners, it's like we got each other's backs, you know, and that's really pretty neat on all levels, on lots of different levels. So it's just reach out and ask. So that's super cool. All right. Thanks, Brian DeMint, for joining me on Bitcoin Piece of Music. Oh, thank you so much. And I wish you the most beautiful day. And everybody else who's listening here, you know, make sure you guys go follow Brian and check out the Orange Pill app, and we'll see you guys over there. So, all right. Peace, love, and warm aloha. Cool. Aloha. Thank you. Hey, aloha. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, it would be awesome if you could help us out. Please like, share, and subscribe on all your favorite listening platforms. And our favorite listening platform is a value for value model podcasting 2.0 app called Fountain.fm. What's cool is you can stream sats to your favorite content creators so that they can keep making kick-ass content for y'all. So go over and check it out. And until then, really just remember, you fucking rock, and I love you. Peace.